Welcome to the Great Work Insights podcast by the O.C. Tanner Institute, the show that features the people, the professionals, the thought leaders, and the coolest companies. And now your host, the man navigating the discussion about the culture, the organized chaos, and the best practices that compel great work, Todd Nordstrom.
Business. We often perceive it as just an exchange of goods and services for a price. Performance. We often perceive it as a simple choice or a will to succeed. Engagement, results, satisfaction, commitment. These are all the words that the corporate world chases to measure and analyze. My guest today digs a little bit deeper. She digs into more of a foundational aspect of mankind, a cornerstone of human psyche. And although she personally has a career history steeped in impressive credentials, it's the foundational element of mankind that truly has captured her attention. What is it? It's very simple. It's hope. As the former head of communications and public relations for Sony, Universal, and Turner Broadcasting, Libby Gill now runs an executive coaching and consulting firm, Libby Gill and Associates. An international speaker and best-selling author, Libby has shared her success strategies on CNN, NPR, The Today Show, and in Business Week, Time, the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and many, many more. Libby helps clients like ABC Disney, Avery Dennison, Deloitte, GoDaddy, Kellogg's, Microsoft, Nike, Oracle, PayPal. It's quite a list, isn't it? Royal Caribbean, Safeway, Warner Brothers, Wells Fargo, and many, many more. Libby, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Todd. Delighted to be here.
I just want to jump in. You and I have known each other for quite some time, and you have focused your career on helping companies, whether you're inside that company or outside of that company, achieve better results, create greater performance, increase engagement, all of those things I mentioned earlier on. But you and I were having a conversation recently, and you said something to me that almost haunted me. You said, it all starts with hope. Tell us why you're so interested in hope.
Well, I do think it starts with hope, and I didn't really realize that I believed that until someone asked me to look back over the course of my work over the past, couple of decades. And I realized how much that idea and that word filtered into everything that I did, and I began to take it to a deeper level of what else is out there in terms of the study on hope. And there is some research and data from both the worlds of medicine and positive psychology that is beginning to build the scientific evidence around what's called hope theory. And what I believe is simply that hope is the most significant and also the most overlooked element in the workplace. We've talked about happiness and optimism and all the things that you mentioned, performance and engagement. But to me, hope is sort of the jet fuel for the journey. It is that critical component that drives success. And truly, I think it's the only thing you can never afford to be without. You can lose money and health and jobs and relationships and just about everything. But when you lose hope, that's when it's over. That's when you can no longer perform and do all of the things that make you successful, that make you who you are.
It's interesting, too, because hope has for a long time kind of been pigeonholed in the religious communities or in kind of a fluffier motivational sense. But when you just said that if you lose hope, you really have nothing else. So what is your definition of hope?
Well, it's interesting because I do see it as akin to faith and to some of the other things like happiness, but hope is actually directed. Hope is something that has a personal element of responsibility. My definition is it's two key components that make up hope. First of all, it starts with the belief that change is possible. Now, you may think that everybody thinks change is possible, but when you drill down, they actually don't. We all know somebody who has been complaining about their job. I'm thinking of someone specific. For 20 or 30 years, they've been in the same job, but they complained about it, but yet never done anything to change it. That's someone who fundamentally does not believe on some level that change is possible or change for them is possible. Or somebody that knows that they need a lifestyle change, like a change in diet or exercise to lose the unwanted pounds to be more fit, but they don't really believe that they're capable of that kind of change. So they don't try to do it. But once you believe that change is possible, and then you combine it with the second component, which is the expectation that what you do as an individual, that your individual actions, the choices, the decisions, the small acts, the big principles, everything that you do yourself, not what the government does or the president or the stock market, but what you can control and do, can give you a positive outcome that you change your world for the better. Then you begin to see that not only can you change it for the better, you can change it immediately. And then you can begin to change it for others, whether that's your team, your division, your company, your community, your family. And for some of those people who really think on a global level, the real movers and shakers of the world, they have changed the course of our planet, whether it's through innovations or through industry, through inventions, through medicine, all the things people have done to really change the course of mankind. So it's really the belief that change is possible and the expectations that your actions as an individual make all the difference.
So let's step back for a second, because you said, if you can get it for yourself, then you can, help others get there as well. If, a lot of the audience listening to this show are managers and employers and leaders in companies. And is it their job to give people hope, or is hope something that a person already has or should have?
Well, I think it's both of those things. It is your job to maintain a level of hopefulness, but it is also your job to feed hope in your organization. So in a sense, it's everybody's job, but it's also everybody's individual responsibility. And when you think about what motivates people, what you all are specialists in, what really motivates people, and there are lots of things other than money, and there's plenty of data and research to show that money's one of those things, but it's certainly not the only thing, that people care deeply about a sense of purpose, accomplishment and mastery of skills, and they want to know that what they do fits into the bigger scheme of what their organization should do or is doing. They want to feel part of that success. And the best managers connect those dots between your individual actions as a worker and what the company is doing as a whole. And I really believe there's no neutrality in there, that you are either feeding hope, and you're sort of feeding that into the NDA of your organization by example, by what you do, by what you share, by recognition of others, or you're starving hope. And I talk to people when I get called as an executive coach, it's often because the hope has been sucked out of an individual or out of a team, sometimes out of the organization. And it's the sense that no matter what we do, it's not going to make a difference. That's when I know people have lost hope. Maybe not on a humankind level, but on an executive or a leadership level. Whatever I try, it's not going to work. And often my job is to reinstill that sense of hope. And to do that, it's really looking at the underlying beliefs, because I believe that it is your own fundamental beliefs, and you have to dig down to uncover them, for good or for bad, that drive behavior, because we do what we believe. And if you're a manager and you believe you've got a good team and a smart staff and that they're capable and they're smart, and you don't have to, crack the whip, because it's not about that. They're there because they're self-motivated people and they want to work hard. Then you begin to push things down. You begin to let people take risks, to grow, to be bolder, to be more thoughtful and more in control and authority of what they do. And that's what I see starts the cycle of hopefulness in the workplace.
Yeah, that's interesting. Obviously, the O.C. Tanner Institute is known for extensive research and in recognition, and you just described it perfectly. But we also have extensive research in the great work side of things and innovation. Let's take hope now to the next level. Getting somebody to come to work every day because they have hope of a better future is one thing. How does hope play into the above and beyond and the bigger picture of innovation?
Well, of course, it's nice when you start with the right people. That makes the job a lot easier. And lots lots of CEOs will say it starts with the people and the culture, and I believe that. But I also believe that you can help take people along the scale from what you said, showing up for work every day. I've got a job, I punch the clock, it's fine, I get a paycheck, I go home. There's nothing wrong with that, and in lots of people around the world would be very grateful to have a job at that level. The next level up from that is really having a career where there is some aspect of status, respect, some recognition, as you mentioned. It's that sense of people recognize what I'm doing a good job, they notice me within the company. There's a path that's carved out. There's generally more money, a better title, all of those things that come with a career. And then there's this special kind of person, and I think the leaders who starve hope can crush this, and the ones who feed it can inspire it. And those are the people who really see their work as a calling. And you all wrote about this in great work. It's people who really feel like, it's my secret. It's I love what I do. If people didn't pay me, I'd probably figure out how to do it anyway. And it's that sense of, I am doing exactly what I was put on the planet to do. And sometimes it's taking what we believe internally and externalizing those beliefs. And for years, since I left the corporate world, which was a great stay for me, but finally I wanted out to do something that felt more deeply meaningful. In the back of my mind was this sort of internal mantra that was floating around saying, hope and tools. That's what you do well. You need to give people hope that there's a better way to do things, that there's a higher level of engagement and purpose in the workplace, and then give them the tools, give them the strategies in order to do that. And when I began to externalize that and say to people, well, this is kind of my internal mantra, people got it. And they said, I want some of that. And once in a while I'll hear somebody say the old cliche, well, hope is not a strategy. And I'll say, yeah, no kidding, hope is not a strategy. But try giving your team a strategy, whether it's Six Sigma or performance appraisals or whatever you do in your organization, when they feel that they've got no hope, that nothing will ever change, that they've got that sort of sense of culture change fatigue. We've done this a million times and everything remains the same. You can't give somebody a tool or a strategy if they don't have that baseline feeling of, hey, I think this is going to work. So it starts with the hope, and then it goes to the tools and strategies.
That's great. You said that you're starting to see some research around hope theory. Do you have any examples or stories where you've seen hope really dictate the outcome? I think we can all think of stories where hope removed, dictates the end of a story, people going to prison and what have you. But from an uplifting perspective, do you have any stories of hope uplifting?
I do. I see this often, and it is usually when I'm brought in. And when I started to hear people vocalize, I'm feeling hopeless, I'm feeling lost, I'm feeling the company's abandoned me. And there was one executive who I worked with who was very successful in her area, and in fact so successful as a leader and hitting her numbers and having a great team that she was moved. And this is sort of the good news, bad news. An organization recognized how great she was and then moved her over to head up a completely dysfunctional area that had been underperforming historically for years. And they put her in that area, and she just sank. She felt like, this isn't a recognition of my ability. This is a prison sentence. This is a punishment. How do I get out of here? And once she got in there, it was going to go one of two ways. She had to make some tough choices about who should remain on this team and who was sort of poisoning the culture. And she did. And once she began to recognize what she was brought in for, that she was collaborative, that she was passionate, that she was risk-taking, that she was not going to micromanage people. She was going to believe in their own ability to succeed and to perform. And this means making those tough choices of getting some people out of the way, because I see lots of organizations who will gleefully work around their underperformers. And frankly, I don't get it. And that comes from being a business owner, where I'm continually saying, now, wait a minute, if this check for whether it's $40,000 or, $400,000 came out of your pocket, would you pay that? But once this woman began to see that she'd been brought in for exactly the reasons why she was so good, she began to really pull out that hopeful part of herself and share that instead of letting it had shut down, and she began to turn that division around. Not everyone could do that. Not everyone could say, I'm going to find the best and highest parts of myself as a leader, and I'm going to infuse them into this group that seems so utterly resistant to change. It was almost a kill them with kindness approach. I'm going to just keep hitting them over the head with their own ability to do the right thing, to make the tough call, to make the choices, and eventually they turned a corner and began to really perform at a level that she expected.
Okay, so now the hard part for all the listeners out there saying, this totally makes sense to me. Hope now is clear to me. How do you apply it at work?
How do we do it? Well, you know this about me, Todd. I'm a big believer, and I love the conceptual. But, man, if you can't take it out and drive it, forget it. There's no use. So I've really looked at this, and the things that I have seen working over time are, first of all, I mentioned that feed hope. Don't starve it in your organization. Look for opportunities to inspire hopefulness by listening deeply to others, by taking their suggestions seriously, by granting them ownership, authority. That's the way you help infuse that sense of hopefulness. Next, and falls under this category of risk-taking, and one of the CEOs I worked with said it perfectly. He said, I encourage original mistakes. Let people make their mistakes. Let them, even when it's going to be a little bit painful. You don't want them to repeat the same ones over and over again, but you've got to reduce fear, and you've got to foster innovation by letting people be the big, bold thinkers and let them commit those new mistakes from time to time. You also have to look at the difference between true hope, what I call true hope, and false hope. Setting realistic standards, measuring outcomes, not just processes. And this I see people struggle with, the millennials who they're not going to count results by the number of hours that their rear end is in a desk chair.
Yeah.
It's not the process, it's the end result. And I applaud that because I think our world moves too fast, it's too virtual. There are too many dotted lines instead of that old hierarchical structure. So you've got to find what's realistic and true and get rid of the false hope, which is sometimes people will come along and think everything's going to be okay, including shoring up their weaker partners, continuing to do the same thing even though there's no rational reason to think it works. So you've got to look at realistic hope versus that sort of false sense of, gee, if we just keep doing whatever we're doing, someday it's going to turn out. And then finally, what I think is the most important is really being tough on those outcomes, tough on results, on measuring those standards and the results, but being really tenderhearted toward your people, giving them, you don't have to coddle them, you don't have to you can't coach them, you don't have to coax the outcome out of them, but you do have to hold them accountable to extremely high standards, measuring them on results, but still treating them with trust and kindness. I always say kindness and candor. Tell them the truth, but not in a mean-spirited way, in a way that allows people to retain their dignity and hear it.
That's fantastic. You're always so well-spoken. Thank you so much for being here. If you want to learn more about Libby Gill, go to www.libbygill.com. That's LIBBYGILL. And check out her best-selling books. Capture the Mind Share, and the market share will follow. You Unstuck and Traveling Hopefully. Libby, thank you so much for being here today.
My pleasure, Todd.
Talk to you soon.
What did you think of today's show? The conversation continues on www.octanner.com. Be sure to leave us a comment. Also, remember to rate, review, and subscribe to all our podcasts on iTunes. Now get out there and build something beautiful. It's your turn now.